We bought the house when we were married.
You make Mr. Painswick sound rather a rough diamond, Lady Grantham.
Marmaduke wasn't a rough diamond, was he, Mamma?
Downton Abbey, the grand finale, is just around the corner, and when it hits theaters this September, it's going to mark the end of a journey that's lasted over 15 years. That's a pretty huge deal for longtime fans who have stuck with the Crawleys and their staff through thick and thin. 6 TV seasons, a bunch of Christmas specials, and 2 full-length movies. But even though excitement is high, there's already a bit of concern surrounding the fate of one character in particular, Lady Mary, played by Michelle Dockery. Mary has been at the heart of Downton Abbey pretty much since day one. She's had some of the most intense highs and crushing lows in the entire franchise, especially with her love life. So naturally, fans are hoping she'll get the happy ending she deserves. The problem? Recent news about the cast list for the grand finale suggests that might not happen, and it's all because her husband, Henry Talbot, played by Matthew Goode, might not be in the movie at all. It wouldn't be the first time Goode has been missing in action either. He didn't appear in Downton Abbey: A New Era, and his absence was explained with a quick line about Henry being off racing cars. It felt a bit flimsy, especially considering how central he was supposed to be in Mary's life. That being said, Goode's disappearance from A New Era wasn't due to story reasons, it came down to scheduling. He was busy filming The Offer at the time, so he just couldn't make it work. Now it looks like the same thing might be happening again. The grand finale was shot between May and August of 2024, but Goode was also filming Department Q from February through June. So even if the dates didn't completely overlap, it's possible the schedules were tight enough that he had to sit this one out too. And if that's the case, it creates a pretty big question mark around Mary's storyline. Mary's already had one tough arc in the second film. With Henry absent, her story felt like it was just sort of hanging in the air. There was even a romantic spark between her and filmmaker Jack Barber, but she turned him down, possibly because she was still holding out hope for Henry. But with Henry potentially gone again, it raises the question, what now? Let's face it, Henry was never the most popular character. Some fans were fine with him, others were never really sold on the Mary-Henry pairing to begin with. But whether people liked him or not, his presence mattered, if only to give Mary a sense of stability after everything she went through with Matthew, played by Dan Stevens. Losing Matthew was a huge moment for both the character and the series. It shaped so much of who Mary became later on. So after all that heartbreak, it felt like she deserved something more solid. That's why this latest casting news is a little disappointing. The new cast list includes a bunch of familiar names: Hugh Bonneville, Elizabeth McGovern, Laura Carmichael, Jim Carter, Joanne Froggatt, and many more. There are also some new faces like Alessandro Nivola and Jolie Richardson, though their roles haven't been revealed yet. So while it's exciting to see the old crew returning and some fresh energy joining in, the fact that Matthew Goode's name is missing stands out in a big way. So what does that mean for Mary in the grand finale? Honestly, it could go a few different directions. The easiest option would be to say Henry's just away again, probably racing or off on some business trip. But that excuse is starting to feel a little overused. It worked once, maybe twice, but a third time might come off as lazy storytelling. On the other hand, the writers could decide to go big. Maybe Henry and Mary have separated or even divorced. But that could feel a bit heavy, especially in a movie that's supposed to wrap everything up with a somewhat hopeful tone. A sudden off-screen death would also be an option, but it's pretty grim, and fans might feel that's an unfair end for Mary's marriage after everything she's been through. What might work best is giving Mary an ending that's satisfying on her own terms, without relying on Henry at all. She's always been one of the more independent and complicated characters in the series. Even when she's made questionable choices, they've usually come from a place of strength and self-reliance. So letting her story close with her in a position of empowerment, whatever that looks like, could actually be a great way to honor everything she's been through. And it's not like Mary needs romance to have a fulfilling ending. Sure, Downton Abbey has always leaned into love stories, but it's also about family, legacy, and change. If she's shown taking over the estate, guiding her children, or stepping confidently into the 1930s with a clear vision of who she is, that might be the perfect note to end on. Of course, Mary isn't the only character fans are watching closely. This being the final film in the franchise, The entire ensemble needs their stories tied up nicely, and according to early footage shown at CinemaCon, the grand finale seems like it'll be a warm, celebratory goodbye. The preview opened on a racetrack in 1930 with the Crawleys arriving and Carson welcoming everyone to a new decade. There were glimpses of Edith, Mary in a stunning red dress, and party scenes filled with joy and nostalgia. The final shot showed Robert Grantham kissing his hand and placing it on Downton Abbey itself, a touching symbol that the end is near. Even though we still don't know all the plot details, the tone seems set. This isn't going to be a bleak farewell. It's more about celebrating what the series has meant to the characters, to the fans, and maybe even to the world of TV itself. But it will still be emotional, and probably more than a little bittersweet. One major emotional thread will no doubt be the absence of Maggie Smith's Dowager Countess. Her character, Violet, passed away in a new era, and the legendary actress herself died in 2024. So while she won't appear in the grand finale, her presence is going to be deeply felt. The movie will likely act as a tribute not just to Violet, but to Maggie Smith and everything she brought to the series. In many ways, this entire final chapter might serve as a goodbye to her as much as anyone else. That's why giving every main character, especially Mary, a proper send-off is so important. It's not just about wrapping things up neatly. It's about honoring the emotional investment fans have had for years. If this really is the last time we see these characters, then they deserve endings that feel earned. They don't have to be perfect or tied in a bow, but they should resonate. With the story jumping forward to 1930, change is in the air. That's a key theme in Downton Abbey, and it always has been. The world keeps moving, the upstairs and downstairs dynamics keep shifting, and the people we've followed for over a decade continue to evolve. So this final film doesn't need to reinvent the wheel, it just needs to show that the journey has mattered and that there's something meaningful waiting at the end of it. If the grand finale can deliver that, especially for someone like Lady Mary, it will be a fitting end to a franchise that's been full of elegance, drama, and heart. So even though we're bracing ourselves for tears, there's hope that we'll also walk away feeling fulfilled. And that might be the best kind of goodbye there is. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Your suggestions for future videos are always welcome in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel to stay in the loop. And if you want, you can share your thoughts about this video in the comments.